loved to laugh and play, and probably like most 3-year-old little boys, found it difficult to sit still for long periods of time because there's so much to explore. And he was from Syria. We don't know the name of the Syrophoenician woman's daughter, but we know that she also was from Syria. And she probably loved to laugh and play and explore. One was a boy, the other a girl. Other than that, they're both pretty similar. They've both been called similar names. One has been called a cockroach, and the other a dog. Our gospel today from Mark that's before us is one that's difficult to read. Most of us might wish we could just skip over it because Jesus doesn't appear so warm and fuzzy. This gospel clearly has an agenda, and being warm and fuzzy is not part of it. Jesus went way up north to Tyre, which is in modern-day Lebanon. This is not where good, God-fearing Jews went to hang out. But he was there, and despite his best efforts, word got out where he was staying. Of course, word got out where he was staying. Can you for a moment imagine what would happen if word didn't get out where he was staying? Can you fathom Jesus traveling that far north, that deep into Gentile territory just to relax on the beach with a cold drink in his hands? I think Jesus had an agenda. And when the Syrophoenician woman heard that he was there, she had an agenda. And she immediately went to him, breaking a boatload of taboos. First of all, she was a woman. Now that can be challenging enough in 2015 in the US, where women only average 78 cents on the dollar for the same job and experience as a man. But in 30-ish CE in the Middle East, it was unheard of. Women were not supposed to speak to a man unless first spoken to, especially a teacher, especially in public. This was disgraceful. The only women that spoke to men in the streets were prostitutes. And then on top of that, well, she was a Gentile, a non-Jew. This woman was from Syria, which, according to Jewish law, made her unclean. No self-respecting Jewish person would want anything to do with that. But then again, it might be difficult to avoid that when you yourself intentionally go deep into Gentile territory. So again, I submit that Jesus had an agenda. And this woman didn't care anything about the taboos that she was breaking. She had a little girl at home who needed help. Her daughter who used to love to laugh and play and explore. This was a desperate mother. Loving parents will break just about any kind of border or boundary when it comes to caring for their children. This woman did just that. She fell at Jesus' feet. She bowed down to him and begged him like a dog. Now, Jesus could have just immediately healed her daughter without so much as a word. He's done it dozens of times. And if Jesus had, we would all probably breathe a sigh of relief, along with those who were there with him. Because then she would be gone, and we wouldn't have to deal with her kind anymore. You know the kind. The kind where you breathe in through your mouth when they're around, so you don't have to smell them. The kind where immediately after you accidentally touch them, you go and you wash your hands because you just don't know. The kind where you wish they would just stop talking already and go away and leave you in peace. That's the kind that the disciples, the Jews, considered unclean and make us uncomfortable. But instead, Jesus engaged her in conversation. And Jesus said aloud what probably everyone with him was thinking. So maybe they could hear how they sounded. When Jesus calls this woman a dog, maybe a puppy, but it's still a dog. And her daughter, the one who used to love to laugh and play and explore, calls her a dog also. And then he asks why he should give them the food, or as the Greek says, the bread, which might mean to us the grace intended for the children of Israel. Well, this woman shatters any ounce of pride she has left. She doesn't seem fazed by the name calling. She's probably heard it hundreds of times before. And she begs for breadcrumbs. Aylin Purdy's parents were also desperate. They were also willing to cross any kind of border or boundary to care for their children and keep them safe. The city they live in has been destroyed. It is a pile of rubble. Hundreds of people, civilians, have been murdered in the streets, including women and children. ISIS will shoot their guns at anything that moves. Syria's conflict has devastated the nation. Almost 250,000 people have been killed, including 12,000 children. And there are another 1 million more who are wounded or permanently disabled. The people did not ask for this. And make no mistake, this is not their religion. This is done to them by people who have twisted and distorted and perverted and violated their religion. Out of fear for their lives, over half of Syria's population of 22 million have been forced to leave their homes. They bring with them nothing but hope for a new life. And they have not been warmly received many places because, let's face it, that's a lot of people. That's enough to make us uncomfortable. It invades our space. We might have to rearrange things. 11 million people hoping for a new life. It's interesting, that's the same number as undocumented people in this country. And we all know how warmly we always accept them. And so for this reason, At least one newspaper in Europe has referred to these desperate, hopeful people as cockroaches. Their very existence is considered taboo. Well, Aylin's parents were willing to shatter whatever pride they had left when they paid smugglers to load them onto a boat, because that was safer than land. Aylin's father felt his wife and his 2 children slip from his fingers as their boat sank. There was nothing he could do. He says they were the most beautiful children in the world. Just a few days ago, Aylin's body washed up on a popular resort beach in Turkey. His mother and brother also drowned. Along with them, there were 12 from that boat trying to reach Greece who drowned, including 3 other people's children. The epistle that Tammy read for us from James today, James clearly has an agenda. When he reminds us that we are to love all our neighbors as ourselves. All our neighbors. And he tells us that if we show partiality, we commit sin and are convicted. James also tells us that if we have faith that is alive and thriving, that others will know us by our love, by our actions, by the way we embrace strangers as family, even if we fear they may make us unclean or uncomfortable. The Gospel's agenda is when Jesus, who, if you remember, was once a child refugee himself in Egypt, Jesus shows us what our isms look like. Our racism, our sexism, our classism. And he reveals to us truth that will set us free from our prejudice. If you noticed, Jesus did not make any requirements of the Syrophoenician woman. He didn't tell her that she needed to become Jewish or start following Jewish law. Nothing. No requirements whatsoever. The only condition that seemed to be there was for Jesus himself to show others that all are deserving of the grace that Jesus brings. Later on, when he healed the man who was deaf and mute, he told him to be opened, to listen, to speak up. We can find healing from our isms when we are opened. Our hearts, our minds, our ears, our voice. The Syrophoenician woman and her daughter, they were never dogs. Aylin was never a cockroach. They are God's children. Martin Luther wrote that God is the God of the humble, the miserable, the afflicted, the oppressed, the desperate, those who have been brought to nothing. God is the God of us. and not one of us is taboo. None of us need to be looking for breadcrumbs, because all are welcome at the feast of the table. Amen.